Well, once again, it is time for movie reviews here on Pure 24/7 Radio, and I have the privilege of welcoming Andy Godfrey. Hello, Andy.
Hey Nathan, we've been away for a couple of weeks. It's good to see you.
It is
Nice
very
to be
good to see
back
you.
on the air. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and it's a privilege to hear about all these films and hear your take on some of these latest movies that come out. It's fantastic. And so I'm looking forward to hearing some more today.
Yeah, okay. Well, shall we start with the biggest two releases? Because since we last spoke, there have been two massive releases. So the first one is Gladiator II, which we'll talk about in a moment. But the one I really want to talk about is Wicked, which has just come out. So, a little bit of a history, if I may. 1990, a guy called Frank Albarn in America publishes a children's book called The Wizard of Oz, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. He writes 14 more books and a load of short stories. Hollywood takes an interest. There was a couple of silent films made. One of them, actually, in 1923, starred Oliver Hardy as the Tin Man. So it's one of the first times Oliver Hardy of Laurel and Hardy was ever seen on screen. 1939, MGM make the Judy Garland film, which is, as you know, if you've read my book, is the first time I ever saw at the cinema. It's the reason why I fell in love with cinema. There's a scene where the house crash lands in Oz. It's all been black and white or sepia up to that point. She opens the door and we walk out into Oz. And that was the moment I fell in love with cinema. I still think the 1939 film, The Wizard of Oz, by the way, is the greatest family movie ever made. And I will argue with anybody who says it isn't, but I think it is. 1978, there was a film called The Wiz, which was an all-black cast, starred Michael Jackson and Diana Ross. 1985, Disney made a sequel called Return to Oz. And then in 1995, a guy called Gregory Maguire writes a book called Wicked. Now, the book tells the story of how the Wicked Witch of the West, who is killed in the film The Wizard of Oz by Dorothy, she throws a bucket of water over her, the Wicked Witch melts, those who remember the film. It tells the story of her life. It tells her background. And it also tells the story of Glinda, who is the Good Witch, and how these two had their paths crossed at university. And it basically tells the story of their life. It tells the story of how they meet the Wizard of Oz and so on. So he publishes a prequel. And a guy called Steven Schwartzoff comes along. Now, Steven Schwartzoff is a musical producer. Originally, the book Wicked, this prequel to The Wizard of Oz, was going to be made into a film. Steven Schwartzoff comes along, this musical producer. He's a great musical genius. And he says, let's not do it as a film. Let's do it as a musical. And I know how to do it. And so he turns this book about the history of the Wicked Witch of the West in Oz into a stage musical on Broadway. It opens in 2003, opens in London in 2006, been playing ever since. Okay, massive, massive, massive hit. Some really good songs. Now, I'd never seen the stage show. Despite my love of Oz, I'd actually never seen the stage show until last week, and I went to see it in London. We now finally have the film version. First thing to say is that it's in two parts. So at the end of this film, you get the words "to be continued" on the screen. Okay, so that's the first thing to say. Second thing to say is that the stage show is 2 hours 45 minutes long. This film is 2 hours 40 minutes long, and it only takes us up to the interval. I mean, this is a work of genius. I went in thinking, knowing this, I went in knowing that the film was in two parts. I went in knowing that what I was going to see was just part one of the show. And I was thinking, this is going to be baggy. They've extended it by an hour. This is going to be baggy. This is going to be boring. This is going to be, unnecessarily long. Not a bit of it. This is a work of genius. They have extended the stage show by an hour, but it doesn't feel like it. And in fact, at the end of 2 hours, 40 minutes, I was sat there thinking, let's have part two. Bring on part two, because I could sit here for another 2 hours. The cast are nothing short of sensational. So playing the Wicked Witch of the West, her real name is Elphaba, is Cynthia Erivo. Cynthia Erivo is just fantastic. I mean, she is just brilliant. She is ably assisted by Ariana Grande, who plays Glinda. Glinda is a Barbie-like character. You know, when we meet her, everything's pink, everything's fluffy. She's nice and fluffy, and she becomes the Good Witch of the West. These two hate each other originally, but they are forced to room together at Shiz, which is the University of Oz. It's kind of like a Hogwarts, actually. And they hate each other. They really can't stand each other. But slowly, as the film goes on, they become friends. And that's all I want to say in terms of the plot. They eventually get to meet the Wizard of Oz, who played by Jeff Goldblum, who was born to play the Wizard of Oz. I mean, he is just absolutely sensational. What I love the music. The songs are sensational. The film is a PG. There isn't one bad word. There isn't one swear word. You could take Granny, take the kids to see this. Everybody will have a great time. And I have spoken to so many people, from Mark Kermode, who's the nation's leading film critic, to friends on my film group who've seen this. Nobody has got one single bad word to say about this film. I have not read, and I've read lots, I have not read one bad word about this film. It is sensational. The dancing. There's been a trend in recent musicals to show people's feet and then people's heads and then people's feet, and lots of cuts and edits in dance sequences, you know. This doesn't do that. This pulls the camera right back and we see the cast dancing. And that's what we want to see. You know, this is a throwback to West Side Story, really, it reminded me, where we get to see large groups of people dancing. I thought that it was incredibly entertaining. It's topical, even though it's been around since 2003. There's one speech where one character says the best way to unite people is to give them an enemy. And bearing in mind what's happening in the United States at the moment, that felt topical. So, Wicked. If you like musicals, if you like having fun at the cinema, if you like spectacle, I mean, the spectacle is out of this world. The sets are phenomenal. If you like really good stories that actually have a point to them, you know, go see this. Now, some people have said to me, well, isn't there a problem in the fact it's only part one, you know, and we got to wait a year for part two? No. This has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but the story still continues next year. And I was reminded of 3 great Christmases running where we had the Lord of the Rings films, you know, and we had to wait, didn't we? We had to wait for the next one and the next one. This feels like that. Now, obviously, people who've seen the stage show will know what's going to happen in part 2. I know what's going to happen in part 2 because I've seen the stage show. And I found it really interesting watching the film, putting all the little clues together as to what's coming up in part 2. But this is a standalone movie. Honest to goodness, it is so entertaining. It is so good. It is my favourite film of the year. I went in thinking, well, I enjoyed the stage show. This is going to be baggy. This is not going to really work because they've only taken part 1 and the film isn't going to work. Trust me, it works. And as I said, I have spoken to so many people who've seen the film and absolutely loved it. And I would recommend it. I mean, I collected the soundtrack today, and you can play the songs on Pure. They're just great, terrific songs, absolutely terrific songs, memorable songs. And I really thought that it was a great film. So I'm waxing lyrical. I'm giving it 10 out of 10. I'm saying it's the film of the year. Go see Wicked. One of the things that it didn't do was distract from the Wizard of Oz. So I thought, oh, hang on a minute, this is gonna take the Wizard of Oz and taint it somehow. No. It builds on it, and it explains a lot. And it's a really good, powerful, lovely, enjoyable, entertaining film. And you know, there's a touch of George Orwell in there, in that George Orwell, of course, was concerned about Big Brother is watching us. There's a touch of that. There's quite a nasty streak in some senses, but that does not detract from the fact that this is incredibly entertaining. And as I say, Ariana Grande as Glinda and Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, the Wicked Witch, are just a brilliant double act. I mean, those two were made for each other. Jeff Goldblum plays the Wizard of Oz with a real twinkle in his eye. Really laid back. Jeff Goldblum is a very laid back actor, as we know from films like Jurassic Park. So, yeah, honestly, Nathan, I mean, I know I'm waxing lyrical. Go see Wicked. It's really good, and it will be when I write my next book and I write about my love of the Wizard of Oz. This will be up there alongside it. I hope part two will be as good. I'm sure it will be because I know what's coming because I've seen the stage show. But honestly, go see Wicked and take the kids. Don't worry. I mean, the scariest thing about the Wizard of Oz, 1939, was the flying monkeys. They always terrified me. The flying monkeys. We meet the flying monkeys. We discover in this how the flying monkeys got their wings because they start life as ordinary monkeys. We discover how they get their wings. They are scary, but honestly, I don't think kids are going to have too much of a problem being scared. It is a PG film, and it couldn't be anything else. It really is lovely. Go see Wicked. By contrast, a 15 certificate film that's out, Nathan, since we last spoke, is Gladiator II. Now, you remember last time when I talked to you about Gladiator II, I said that it's historically inaccurate. Well, it is. We know that they staged sea battles in the Colosseum. They did not have sharks. This film has sharks eating people falling out of boats in the Colosseum. They did not have gladiators riding rhinoceroses. This film has gladiators riding rhinoceroses. Now, when you go see Gladiator 2, and again, it's over 2 hours long. Okay, so it's a long film. When you go see Gladiator 2, this is what you need to do. You need to put all of the historical accuracies out of your brain. You need to forget about history, all right? Because it will ruin it for you. If you put the historical inaccuracies out of your brain and say, I'm not going to worry about them, then you will have a good time with this. So the story is that at the end of Gladiator, Gladiator, played by Russell Crowe, killed the Roman emperor. And for safety's sake, the Roman emperor's son was sent away. It's now 25 years later. The Roman emperor's son has grown up, and he's now living in Nimbia, which is being invaded by the Romans. He is captured by the Romans. They don't know that actually he's the rightful emperor because two other emperors are on the throne. Two twin brothers have taken the throne. They don't know that this slave is actually the rightful heir to the throne. He becomes a gladiator. Off we go again. It's basically the same kind of story where he is trying to overthrow with other slaves the evil emperors. This is spectacle. I mean, I saw this on a big screen. I saw Wicked on an IMAX screen. I saw this on an IMAX screen. It is spectacle beyond belief. It is absolutely fantastic. There's lots of action. There's lots of fighting. It's quite gory. Okay, let me just say that. There's lots of blood and guts and gore. Okay, but we are in the Colosseum. We are with gladiators. We are a 15 certificate. Okay, the story is not quite a retread of the original, but almost. But I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, this is an epic film on an epic scale. Great performances, great acting. Denzel Washington plays a slave owner. He plays the person who's buying the slaves and then turning them into gladiators and taking them to the Colosseum. He is having the time of his life. He is loving it. And it's almost as if at times he's deliberately walking into the camera to make sure he's in shot, even if he hasn't got a line to say. He wants to be in the film every second, and he is just having fun. And we have fun with him. So that's the second epic. So Wicked 2 hours 45. I think Gladiator 2 is 2 hours 15, something like that. You're going to spend a lot of time in the cinema. But depending on your pick, if you like musicals and fantasy and that kind of thing, go see Wicked. If you like action and adventure, go see Gladiator 2. These are the two big films at the moment. We've talked about all the other films actually that are still in the box office top 10. But those are the ones to go see.
Awesome.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say actually, I had no idea when you're talking about the history of the Wizard of Oz. I had no idea there was quite so many reincarnations of it, so many different films made from it.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, there was The Wiz was 1978, and that was Diana Ross and Michael Jackson. Diana Ross played Dorothy, and it's it's a soul version, it's soul music, really, version of it. Return to Oz in 1985 was a prequel, was a sequel. It was a Disney film, and they used stop motion animation in that. And we again meet the Scarecrow. We again meet some other characters. We It's based on some of the book. I mean, as I said, there were 14 books and 40 short stories that Frank L. Baum wrote about Oz. So all sorts of characters. We meet a character in that film called TikTok. I've not seen it for a very long time. Not seen it for years, but it is. I like it. It got a lot of criticism at the time, and I think that was because people were just comparing it to the 1939 film, the Judy Garland film, and saying, "Oh, it's not as good," which it's not, but it's still a good film in its own right. It's still entertaining.
Mm.
So yeah, lots of adaptations of Oz, really. And if you buy the latest Blu-ray of The Wizard of Oz, you actually get some of the silent films as well as bonuses, and you get the one with Oliver Hardy playing the Tin Man, which is quite interesting to watch, actually. So yeah, so there have been a lot of adaptations of Oz, yeah.
That's really
And
interesting.
you think of 14 books, I mean, I'm sure there's more to come. Um, there were two films out in the cinema today, which I haven't seen yet, but I just want to flag them up
Mm.
because I think our listeners would be interested. One is Moana 2. So you remember back in 2016, Moana came out, a Disney film about a young Hawaiian princess who saves her community. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is in this as well. So Moana 2 is out today. Also out today, starring Ray Fiennes, who's a great actor, is Conclave. And this is a thriller about the death of the Pope. And Ray Fiennes plays the bishop who is in charge of the conclave, the meeting where all the bishops get together to choose the next pope. Okay, it's a thriller based on a novel. Those two films are out today. We'll talk about them next week because I'm really looking forward to both of those. I wanted to flag up, if I may, a couple of films for people to watch at home if they don't fancy going out to the. I don't know what the weather's like up there in Milton Keynes. It's quite cold. And I've just got back from 4-day break in Paris, and my claim to fame now is that I stood on top of the Eiffel Tower in a snowstorm. So people might not want to venture out. There are two really good films to catch at home. The first one I wanted to mention is a film called Joy, which is on Netflix. Joy is the story of the scientists who pioneered test tube babies. And what's really interesting about this film, it's got a great cast, including the wonderful Bill Nighy, who I love. What's really interesting about this film is that one of the researchers who really, really was instrumental in IVF treatment for women was a Christian. So the film deals with the ethical and moral dilemma of, are we right to create life? Yeah, I mean, these people who were developing IVF at the time got a lot of abuse. They were called Frankenstein, basically. They were creating monsters, babies in test tubes. They were called Frankenstein. And she battles with this. And there's a scene where she's having a conversation with her vicar about the value and meaning of life. And I found it really entertaining. I found it really interesting. It's on Netflix. It's worth seeing. If whatever your opinion of IVF treatment and the test tube babies, it's worth seeing because it explains their motivation, which was genuinely to help couples and to help women who couldn't have children to have children. I kept saying all the way through the film, all we want to do is help women who are barren to have children. It's all we want to do. And yet, of course, the moral and the dilemma, the moral dilemma is, are we right to create life? And of course, the church said at the time, no, we shouldn't be doing this. So that's one to watch at home. And I think it will raise some interesting questions. I found it very entertaining, but I found it very thought-provoking, very challenging. The other film, and I know it's a bit early, but we may as well, everybody else is. There is a film on Sky now and on Now TV, which came out in cinemas last year. I actually saw it at the cinema. It's called Journey to Bethlehem. This is a musical adaptation. We talked about Wicked. This is a musical adaptation of the Nativity story. So basically, we have Joseph and Mary and the shepherds and the wise men bursting into song. And it's pop songs, it's pop music, it's High School Musical. It's the Nativity story done as High School Musical, basically. Uh, I've got the soundtrack. Again, Nathan, you could play the songs on Pure because they're very, very biblical. The soundtrack of Journey into Bethlehem. The film is very biblical. The film tells the Nativity story. I was quite happy as a Christian. I had no qualms whatsoever with the way the story was told. I actually got to interview for Sorted magazine the director of this film. He was in Hollywood. I was sat here in Milton Keynes. And I got to interview him and I said to him, excuse me, I got to interview him and I said to him, what's the motivation behind this film? Why are you making a musical version of Journey into Bethlehem? His name's Adam Anders. And Adam said to me on Zoom, he said, well, look, I want people to know that the Nativity story is true. And the great thing about this film, this version of Mary and Joseph and the shepherds and everyone, right at the beginning, it says, the words come up on the screen, based on a true story. How about that? Isn't that brilliant? And he said, I want people to know that the Nativity story is absolutely true. The songs are great. The dancing's great. You got Mary and Joseph and their friends dancing around Nazareth, when they discover she's pregnant. You got Joseph getting angry, as he must have done because he thought his wife had an affair. She's pregnant with somebody else's baby. You've got all of that. You've got scenes with Mary going off to see Elizabeth. Lots of people from my church, I told them to go and see it. They enjoyed it. It's been produced by Christians. Antonio Banderas, who I don't think he's a Christian, but he plays King Herod. He's really nasty. I mean, he is really nasty. And I thought that, as I say, I've got the soundtrack CD. The music is great. Adam Anders has been responsible for producing some fairly successful pop music in America. And he wanted to make, and I said to him, as I say, why are you making a pop musical version of Nativity? Because I want teenagers to watch a film about the coming of Christ into the world, and I want them to know it's a true story. So if you're looking for an early Christmas film, if you're looking for a film to watch over Christmas with the family, you can get it on DVD. You can get the soundtrack on CD. It's now available to stream. Journey to Bethlehem, really, really good. Really good. And great music. So 2 great musicals, one in the cinema, one at home. Really intriguing film about IVF and the creation of IVF treatment, and an action adventure movie set in ancient Rome. I mean, there's something for everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are my films of the week.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andy.
My
Good to hear
pleasure.
about those. And I must say, as I say, I had no idea there were so many reincarnations of so many adaptations of The Wizard of Oz. It's really interesting to hear some of the history of that story, that kingdom, that universe, if you will.
Yeah, and as I said, there were 4. I'm surprised there aren't more. I think one of the problems was that the 1939 film, the Judy Garland film, was so successful and so good that for 40 years people thought we can't touch this. They were scared because they thought we're going to be compared. And then Michael Jackson and Diana Ross come out with an all-black cast version. Disney make the sequel, which was not a success, but I think is a really good film, Return to Oz. Thankfully, the musical Wicked came along and has spawned this fantastic new film. I love the 1939 film, and I could watch it again and again and listen to Judy Garland singing Over the Rainbow. That scene where she sings Judy Garland sang Over the Rainbow, it's reckoned, in concerts several thousand times in her life, but she never sang it better than she did on the soundtrack of The Wizard of Oz. And I'll tell you very quickly, I have got a CD that was released in this country. They only released 2,000 copies of this particular CD. And I was living in Weston-super-Mare at the time, and I went from Weston-super-Mare to London, to HMV in London, by train to be there for 9 o'clock in the morning in London. It's a 2 hour plus train journey to stand in the queue to get this CD because there was only 2,000 of them coming in the country. And it's a CD that has got, it's the soundtrack of the film, but it's got outtakes on it. And I have this CD, and there's one point where she's singing Over the Rainbow and she has to stop because she needs to cough. And on the CD, that's how committed I am. I have one of these very, very limited edition CDs of Judy Garland rehearsing Over the Rainbow. As I say, I got up very early in the morning, caught a train, stood outside HMV in Oxford Street to get one of these limited editions on the day it went on sale. And it's one of my proudest possessions, the fact that I have this particular CD. I've got 6 books on the making of The Wizard of Oz. I've studied it. There's some great fun facts about the original film. I mean, you know, it's all about the ruby slippers, where the Judy Garland's wearing ruby slippers in the film. There's one scene where, if you look very carefully, she's actually wearing black slip-on plimsolls when she's supposed to be wearing the red slippers. And there's other little facts and figures about the film. I thought that, yeah, and watching some of the silent versions are really interesting as well. So I'm surprised there haven't been more. Maybe, who knows now, with the passing of time, with Wicked being so successful, some of the filmmakers will go back to the original books and we'll make stories, because Oz is a big place. You know, Oz is a big place. There's lots of other things going on in Oz outside of the Emerald City. You know, lots of characters that Frank L. Baum created, and let's wait and see. But you never know.
Yeah. Well, then I suppose with all that knowledge, and you certainly speak with some authority when you say that Wicked is a good film.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, film criticism is just somebody's opinion. My opinion is that Wicked is a great film. My personal opinion. It is also the opinion of, I don't know anyone else. I don't know anyone who's seen it who hasn't said it's great. And I was surprised that my friend Mark Kermode, who's the country's leading film critic, Mark is not known for liking musicals. He's not a big stage musical fan. And when I turned on to look at his review on YouTube, I was expecting him to say, "Oh, I didn't enjoy this, blah blah blah, you know, it's rubbish, and the dancing and the story." And he came on and he said, much to my surprise, "I absolutely love this," you know. And he's never seen the stage show. And the other thing, Nathan, and this is a whole other debate, of late we have seen several films made of stage shows that haven't been very good. So Cats, famously, they made a film of the stage show of Cats. People love the stage show of Cats. I didn't read one good review of that. The film was rubbish. The film was incomprehensible. The film was terrible. The performances were bad. The casting was bad. The costumes were bad. The film version of Les Miserables, my favourite musical, is Les Miserables. I've seen the stage show, I think, 13 times, 11 times in the West End. I love Les Miserables. I thought the film was terrible. So what we have with Wicked, we actually, for once, have a movie of a stage show that is good. That is really good. And, you know, we're all used to the sets from The Wizard of Oz and the Yellow Brick Road and all that. They've recreated it beautifully. They've recreated what was done in 1939, what we're used to seeing. They've recreated it for this perfectly. And there is even a scene in, well, is it a spoiler? No. There is even a scene in this where we see Dorothy and the Lion and the Tin Man walking down the Yellow Brick Road, but from a distance, because they're not, this isn't their story. This is not the story of Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man. Okay? This is the story of the Wicked Witch and how she became wicked and what drove her to become the Wicked Witch. Okay? And when you see the story, you actually have some sympathy for her. That's the surprising thing. When I saw the stage show, I thought, I'm actually feeling sorry for her because of the way the story unfolds, because of the way the plot thickens. So, yeah, we actually have, I mean, you and I believe in miracles. We have a miracle here. We have a film that is better than the stage show it's based on. That never happens. I mean, that never happens, but it has happened. It made My Fair Lady, I think, was probably the last time, 1964, when a film of a stage show was better than the stage show. Possibly The Sound of Music, 1966, you know. But very rarely is the film of a stage show better than the stage show. Okay. This is.
Yeah.
Go see it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Andy. Thanks for telling us about these new films. And of course, as ever, if you've perhaps seen one of these or you go and see one of these and you'd like to give us your thoughts on it, then let us know. Or if you've got some questions about a film, you can, of course, let us know as well. hello@pure247radio.org. But thank you so much, Andy. Great to hear from you again.
My pleasure, Nathan. And next week we'll review Moana 2 and Conclave. We'll look forward to that. God bless you and God bless Pure.